Converting Fractions to Decimals, Part 2. In today's lesson, students will learn how to convert fractions into decimals using long division. Using what? Very good. Before we begin, let's review. Remember that a decimal is equal to a fraction. In fact, a decimal is another way to write a fraction that has a denominator based on the number 10. Right? So we've been changing fractions into tenths and hundredths. Remember that if this is a decimal, tenths is one place after the decimal point, and hundredths is two places after the decimal point. But what happens when you have a fraction like 1/3, in which you cannot multiply 3 by any number to get 10 or 100? How do you change 1/3 into a decimal? Let me show you. You actually do it using division. So let's learn to change a fraction into a decimal. Write that down. You're going to have to remember TIBO. What does TIBO stand for? Repeat after me. Say top in, bottom out. Say it again. Top in, bottom out. Okay. So you look at 1/3. 1/3 reads as this. 1 divided by 3. So first we'll draw our division house or our box. Okay. We're going to divide. We need to put the top or the numerator in, and the bottom, what's the bottom? 3, we're going to put it out. This is 1 divided by 3. This looks very funny, doesn't it? It looks very funny because can 3 go into 1? Or could you skip count by 3 to get to 1? Can you do that? No. So this is why you're going to put a 0 here, and then a decimal next to it. When you put a 0 at the top of the box, you're also going to place a 0 after this number in the dividend. You can turn, when you put a 0, okay, it means, okay, we're actually going to be working in tenths, okay? So it turns 1 into 10. You can always add a 0 in the dividend if you put a 0 at the top of your box. So let's write that over here. Put a 0 with a decimal on the top. Okay, that's the top of your division box. And a 0 next to this number in the box is actually called the dividend. Dividend. Okay, we got that? Okay. So why did I do that? Why did Miss Cotran do that? Well, if you put a 0 and I say, look, 3 can't go into 1 because 1/3 is actually a fraction. So we need to work with tenths. Can 3 now go into 10? Can 3 skip count to 10? Yes. We say 3, 6, 9. How many times? 3. Okay. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract. So what I just did is when you multiply, first you divide, then you multiply. At last you subtract to find a remainder. What is the remainder? 10 minus 9, it is 1. The remainder is 1. What we're doing here is long division. Okay, long division. And sometimes you have to repeat this. 1/3 is a special type of fraction, and it's called a repeating decimal. Okay? So look what happens. Look what happens. Can 3 go into 1? Look. This is the hardest part. Can 3 go into 1? No, it cannot. So if you make this a 10 again, how many times will 3 go into 10? 3 times, right? Again. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract, you get a remainder of 1. This is going to keep on happening over and over and over. And that is why sometimes you have to repeat. So because if I kept on doing long division, I would get 0.333333 forever. To show that it's a repeating decimal, I'm going to put a line at the top that covers both of these 3's to show that 3 goes on forever. So this is a special type. You either have repeating decimals like this, or you have terminating decimals, which means that you end up with no remainder. Okay, so let's do some examples. So now we're going to change the fraction 1/2 into a decimal. Okay, so what do we have to remember? We have to remember TIBO. TIBO stands for top in. We're going to put the top in, bottom out. This reads as 1 divided by 2. That's silly. You can't divide 1 by 2, can you? Can 2 go into 1? Can it? No. So what's the first thing you have to do? 2 cannot go into 1, or you can't skip count by 2 to get to 1. So you're going to put a 0 with a decimal point, and where else are you going to put a 0? Right here. Okay. So now we're going to ask ourselves, well, now can 2 go into 10? Can 2 go into 10? Yes, it can. How many times? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 5 times, right? Okay. Now we're going to multiply. We're going to do long division. What is 5 times 2? 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract. What's 10 take away 10? It is 0. Okay? So our answer, or the decimal that 1/2 is equal to, is 5 what? It's not 0.5. What do you call this? It is 5 tenths. Remember? If you have a decimal, you're talking about a number that is actually a fraction. The first place after the decimal point is called tenths. Remember? Tenths. So if I say 0.5, I'm actually saying 5 tenths, which is also equal to 5 tenths. Then we ask ourselves, is 1/2 equal to 5 tenths? Are they equal? They are, right? What do you have to do to 1? What do you have to multiply by 1 to get 5? You multiply by 5. And what do you multiply by 2 to get 10? Oh, you multiply by 5. So see how these are equivalent. 1/2 is equal to 5 tenths as a decimal written as 0.5 or 5 tenths. Let's try another example. Now this one we've seen before. Okay, this is 1/4 or 1 divided by 4. This is also known as 1/4. It's known as what? 1/4. How much is a quarter? It's 25 cents, right? So can you guess what the answer is going to be? Anybody? Okay, let's do it with division. Remember TIBO. Top in, bottom out. How many times does 4 go into 1? Trick question. Can 4 go into 1? No. If the number in the box is smaller than the number outside the box, you have to put a 0 with a decimal. When you put a 0 with a decimal at the top of the box, you also add a 0 next to the number in the dividend. Okay? Now we can do this. How many times does 4 go into 10? We say 4, 8. So it goes in 2 times. What is 2 times 4? 2 times 4 is 8. Now we're going to subtract. What's our remainder? 10 take away 8? 10 take away 8 is 2. Now, here's the interesting thing. You're left with 2. When you divide with decimals, you can go ahead and put 0 at the end of any remainder. Because 4 can't go into 2, right? You can't do that. You can't do that. But if you add a 0 and you make 2 20, okay, then it works. How many times does 4 go into 20? You skip count by 4. How many times to get to 20? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. 5 times, right? So we're going to put a 5 at the top, and then we're going to multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. When you subtract, you get a remainder of 0. Okay? So the answer here is 25 what? What do we call this? 25, not tenths. 25, let's look. 25. What's this word here? Hundredths. Okay. We can also call this a quarter. Okay, but it's read as 25 hundredths. Write that down. So now let's change 3/8 into a decimal. Okay. How are we going to do that? Use T-bow, right? You're going to divide. You're going to put the top, the numerator in the box. Denominator out. Top in, bottom out. Okay. Can 8 go into 3? Is 3 a multiple of 8? No. So because it's not, you're going to go ahead and put a 0 with a decimal. Where else do you put a 0? Where else do you put a 0? Right here? Yes. Okay. So now we ask ourselves, oh, okay. Well, can 8 go into 30? How many times could we skip count by 8 to get to 30? Let's go ahead and do that. 8, 16, 24. Okay. So we have to stop there, right? We're going to get 3. Very nice. So 3 times 8 is 24. Subtract, okay? What is 30 take away 24? Remember, do not tell me, and I know you will, even though it's the end of the year and we've practiced this about 1,000,000 times, you're going to tell me, oh, 0 minus 4 is 4. No. No. What do? Can you take 4 from 0? No. So you're going to borrow. You're going to go next door, make this a 2, make this a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. And again, we can add a 0 to this remainder. Just make a habit, if you have a remainder, put a 0 after it, okay? Because you're going to keep going until you get no remainder. You're going to keep repeating the division. Can 8 go into 60? Oh, yes, it can. Let's see how many times. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56. We would stop here, right? Because the next one's 64. So it goes in there how many times? Is this right? 5, 6, 7. Yes. 7. Okay. So we get 7 times 8. Remember 7 times 8? Remember this? Say 7 times 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Say it again. 7 times 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. So 5, 6, 7, 8 means it's 56 when you multiply. Okay. All right. 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract. Again, think about if you're at 56 and you need to get to 60. I say, what's 60 minus 56? You can start at 56, count up. It's easier. Say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 4 left over. Okay, we're almost done. What should we do now? We're always going to put a 0 at the end of the remainder, right? Okay. Now we finally come to a number, you see, that 8 can skip count into with no remainder, right? Isn't 40 divisible by 8? How many times do you skip count by 8 to get to 40? How many times? Let's try it. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. How many times is that? 5, right? All right. So we say 5. 5 times 8 is 40, and finally we're left with no remainder. Okay? So we have a decimal that we haven't seen before, and it is, you have a decimal, and then you have 3 places after the decimal. So remember, if we write the decimal over here, okay, we're learning about one more place value over. You have 3 in the 10th place, 7 in the 100th place. And the place that comes after is 5, and that's the 1000th place. Because remember, you have decimal system is based on the number 10. So you have 10. 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. So this is 375 thousandths. Okay, get that down.